Hello, welcome back to Quotes of Interest. I am your one of two hosts, Joshua, and this is my second host. Not gonna say co-host because we're equal. Andrew,
What's up?
say hello, Andrew. So, the quote I picked for today is from 1984 by George Orwell. Now, this is one of my favorite books of all time, if not my favorite book next to the Lord of the Rings trilogies plus The Hobbit, and probably the first Wheel of Time book. And I don't know, there's a lot of books I like. Anyway, this is like the first book I can remember that actually got me interested in reading. I remember reading it in like middle school or high school around there. So, uh, the first quote or the quote I picked for this one: "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past."
Yeah.
So I'll say that one more time. Uh, who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. So what do you think? What are your thoughts on
I
that?
feel like that's a very famous quote. I haven't read 1984. I know it's pretty popular in schools obviously. It's one of the
My
best books.
God. Well,
Yeah.
we read it in high school, I think. Did you not? Did you not read it?
No, they didn't have me read it in high school.
Were you in those AP classes?
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
fucking guy.
Which is
This
surprising
fucking
that
guy.
which is surprising though they didn't have us read it in those classes. But yeah, no, I didn't read it in those classes.
Bro, it's because they're controlling your future. They don't want you to know, bro.
Apparently. But I feel like it's a famous that's pretty famous and used like in a lot of different media. But um what do you think of it?
So it's definitely very interesting because, like, so think of we're Americans, right? So
No
in
way.
history class, no way. No, I'm actually, I have New Zealand in me. I'll just claim to be a New
There
Zealander.
you go.
I know nothing about New Zealand. I should probably learn. It's in my past. It's in my blood.
I can feel
Anyway,
it in my
so I can
bones.
feel it. I can feel the New Zealand farmer in me. My grandpa was a farmer in New Zealand.
Nice.
Anyway, so uh okay, so as I was saying is like, okay, we're American, right?
Yeah.
We're we learn about American history. So whatever history we're taught is like, okay, you're American, this is who we are. This is what our country's founded upon. And so this is who you should be, for be free, be freedom and all that. And eventually, get rid of slavery, treat people right, that sort of jazz. Uh, and then try to get your own kind of land, right, and build up a nuclear family. Just trying to be like embed an American culture of like freedom and small government, state governments instead of a big universal government. Or at least that's like the idea of what you're trying to be told. So using that as like an example, uh, that's the past we learn about, which tries to shape who we are as an American. So who controls that past? Well, if you're not going to a private school, you're going to a public school. So the government's controlling your history. That so everything you learn in the classroom is what the government, if you're going to a public school, especially, is what they're trying to tell you. And so that's what you know. And so they can kind of guide your thoughts and your thinking of who you are as an American that will impact the future, right? And then who controls the present controls the past. As an American, who controls America, the US government, who controls the history education system, the government. So they control the past by teaching you what they want to teach you, right? So that's just kind of like as an example of my thoughts on that. In 1984, like the whole book is like a dystopian tyrannical fascist government anyway. So that quote fits really well within their society as a whole.
Yeah,
So that's kind of like a quick little brush of my thoughts on that.
yeah, no, I agree with most of that. I mean, like we've all been through. At least you and I, we went to public school, obviously. In a private school might be a little different depending on what the curriculum they teach. But even in a private school, most private schools, at least in the U.S., are religious based, so they still teach you kind of what they want to teach you, uh, just from a religious perspective, you know. So even though the government has its own ideas about what they want you to perceive history wise, you know, what they want to show you from the history, what they want you to think America was founded on, and then that kind of informs your opinions on what you become and what an American is. But I mean, private schools do a similar thing, but usually it's more religious based. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I feel like it's one of those quotes that's
Yeah.
like been used so much because it's a really good one as far as like, and I think a lot of people have talked about it at this point in like 2023, where it's like our education system, especially like history, is written by the winners, right? And it's written by
Yeah.
what they want to show us, when in reality there's a lot of stuff that they probably should be teaching us that they leave out. And a lot of people have
Yeah.
like criticized the public schools for that. So I think it's even relevant now, which is probably why it's used in so much media. It's probably never gonna be like not relevant.
Yeah.
So
And it's not even the government that's the only one who like does that. It's like with regular documentaries. Uh it's like how can you trust these documentaries that much? Like who's making them? Who's funding them? And what are they teaching you? So there's really when it comes to like learning about the past, you gotta like honestly do research about who's the one presenting this information to you and are
definitely.
they trustworthy and do they have an agenda? So that's the whole reason like I really like this quote from the book because if I guess you haven't read the book, but if you had, then it makes sense that whoever controls the past is controlling your future because like in the book there's like a whole job where these people are finding news articles and stuff from the past and they're changing dates and they're changing information constantly so no one knows what the past truly is and and when they keep changing the past no one really knows what the hell's going on. They're not unified. They're not a whole people. They're scattered and that's what's mostly keeping them down and separated. Well, it's a aspect of it. There's a lot more than just that in the book, but that's kind of what this quote reminds me of is like they're controlling the past by keeping people by changing it all the time and by changing it all the time keeping people separate and from coming together to unify around
Mhm.
something that makes them a community because they're not a community. They're like individuals trapped in this overreaching system that won't let anyone like form any bonds of any kind, friendship or relationship wise.
I see. That's interesting for sure. Well, we'll probably have to read it for this book club because, yeah, like I said, I didn't read it in high school because it sounds good.
Yeah.
But I like the point that you make about who presents the information because that's just as important as like the curriculum that's set, right? So like the government or whatever the religious organization that is presenting history in a certain way, it's also dependent on who's presenting the information and like if they have an
Hmm.
agenda or if they're biased. But I feel like that's one of the first things that you really kind of have to learn as you're going through the education system is like how much bias there is even within just the education system, like what they're presenting to you. I mean, like it, not to bring a quote into another quote, but
Oh, oh.
we're doing quoteception here. But I like the quote by. It's gonna make me sound like a fucking douchebag, but
Oh
um,
God,
the quote by Aristotle that's
this
the
fucking guy.
the more
I'm just kidding.
fucking Aristotle, my man. The mark of an educated mind is to entertain a thought without accepting it. And basically what that means is
Damn.
just saying like, when somebody says something to you, if you're able to critically understand where that's coming from, like why they're telling you that, what the source of the information is, and to entertain the thought without immediately accepting it, that's usually the mark of someone who like can critically think, right? Somebody who isn't going to critically think or isn't going to think about how there's bias within something that's being said to them isn't typically educated. I mean, you don't have to be educated to be able to do that, right? There's plenty of smart people who don't go through like a conventional education system, but the ability to like understand that somebody telling you something has bias is extremely important. So I like that you
Yeah.
brought that point up.
Yeah. Because I'm like, you don't need to go to like college or anything to be
No,
smart.
no.
Not at all. I've met
Especially
plenty of
nowadays,
people in
especially in like
college. Yeah, especially
2023,
now.
more
God
so now
damn.
than ever with the internet and with all the things you can. I mean, you still have to work hard. I feel like no matter what, you gotta
Yeah.
like
You
work.
always have to work hard.
Yeah, it's either you're
Yeah.
gonna go to college and work, or you're gonna like start your own business, start your own thing, and you're gonna work your ass off anyway there too. So it's like, I mean, either
Yeah.
way, you're gonna work your ass off. But like, just pick your poison, I guess. But
Yeah. And I
yeah.
I watched this video the other day. It was about academia and it was talking about how students who are basically the customer, right? So they're paying for this education. So unless unless you absolutely fail all your tests, the teachers will do everything in their power to try to pass you. Because if you don't, it doesn't make them look good. And like this video is
Oh
coming from
yeah.
like a professor who I think got fired or something. So
Yeah.
take that as it is.
I think it
But like
also depends on the discipline, right? Like so, like for business students, for my perspective, being a business major, the most general of them. But yeah, you definitely get that sense where it's like the professors are there and trying their best to like pass you. I mean, there were some classes where it was like they were intentionally trying to weed people out for sure. Like they intentionally
oh
made it
yeah,
hard for no reason. But like most of the time they're there to try it. They're going to try their best to pass you, which I mean, it's a double-edged sword, right? Cuz it's like you do want your professors to like care about their students and you want the professors to care about them passing because that's the whole
yeah.
point of
But
it is they're supposed to learn and like do well, but at the same time you also don't want to like just pass them because they're the customer like you said.
yeah.
But also
Well, it's
like
like
in if you're like an engineering, like if you're in an engineering program, failing
oh
is like
yeah,
part of it. So like I feel like with engineering, maybe that would be my only criticism of that professor's essay is like if you're an engineering professor, they don't want everybody to pass. That's like the expectation. So it's like,
yeah.
but yeah, in other disciplines, I would agree.
Like I've peer reviewed some of my peers like papers and stuff throughout when I was in college, and let me tell you, I'm just like holy shit, they passed. I was like that paper is like to me it was like a D, like it had to be because like
And my
he would.
paper was an A plus.
Well, I mean I
Yeah,
don't
I'm
want to
just kidding.
brag, but it typically was.
Uh,
But
yeah.
it doesn't matter because well I think like I'm not like the most amazing writer in the world, but compared to some of the people I was with, like because they would come out and they'd have like a list of all the scores everybody got, but there wasn't a name to the scores. That way they could actually present them so he would show where everyone was in the class
Yeah, yeah,
without
yeah.
saying who got what.
Right. Yep.
And and so he does a thing where he's like only this amount of people are allowed to get an A, only this amount of people are allowed to get a B, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Uh, so this way it keeps it more fair, I guess, when it comes to people who actually put effort into their papers. So I think we
Yeah.
got way off topic from the quote, but anyway, that was just a thought. So
No, no, it's a really good quote. I think it opens. You can approach it from many different angles. I even thought about like I don't know if this is necessarily the exact interpretation of the quote, but it made me think of like, the people who control the past also control the future. I think about And I don't know why I'm thinking about housing specifically. I guess because we're kind of in a housing crisis in the US and I'm thinking about how I just bought a house, but like um you think about older people and when they bought the houses in the past and they kind of controlled the future that we live in now where houses are so fucking expensive. Like because they did it in the past where they bought the houses and then the housing prices just soared because people
People
were
are moving there.
people are moving to those places, the cities get bigger, or they sell the houses and these big rental companies get them and they rent out everything, and then everything is owned by all these big real estate companies and it drives up the prices of everything. It kind of made me think
Yeah,
of that too, where it's like, you know they controlled that past and we don't really, our generation doesn't have as much control over it now
yeah,
as compared to like when they were at our age, they had a lot more control over it. So
yeah.
yeah.
Like when I look back to like Shawnee, Kansas, and that same thing when I first lived there, it was like small shit. There's
Oh yeah, it
nothing
was
out there.
tiny, dude.
Farmlands everywhere.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
yeah.
and then through like middle school, elementary school, middle school, and high school, they started building because like you can even see like the houses. I don't want to give out names of places,
Yeah.
but like but like even like there's some neighborhoods that were or have like smaller looking houses, and then you go down the street and then you see like the bigger houses, and you're like, okay, so this is where they started off. And then as the area got bigger, then you got these houses, and then they started building townhomes because now it's getting so expensive that people can't afford these houses around here that would have been able to have been afforded if the bigger houses weren't built.
Right.
So, and then you got more schools built, and so
Yeah, man.
economics, people moving there. Even Arizona is the same way. Like my
Oh
dad was
yeah.
telling me, because I was born in Arizona, and when we lived here, the house they lived in, I think, was around 100, 200,000, maybe. I can't really remember, but it was like around there. And you know how much it's worth now?
I bet like
It's worth
600, right? 600
it's worth like
something.
$1 million.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's fucking insane.
Yeah,
Like,
God, yeah.
yeah,
It's
literally,
so rough.
it's yeah. And I'm doing my best not to like give area names out and such because I don't
Yeah.
want to like don't find me.
Well, and Arizona is like a hot market,
But
obviously. Like a lot of people want to
yeah,
move there. But I mean, even New Mexico, which is like not as popular as Arizona, obviously, like not as many people want to move here. Um, I've been talking to locals and stuff because I only moved here fairly recently, and they talked about how even in 2019, the average rent price in I don't know if I should even say this city I live in, but I live in Albuquerque, so like in 2019,
well, it's a big area. They're
yeah, it's a
not
pretty
gonna.
big
No one's
city.
gonna find you.
So 2019, I mean it's not that big of a city, but compared to like where we lived, it's a bigger city. But like
Oh,
20
it's way bigger than Kansas City.
yeah, 2019, the average rent was like $1,200 to $1,300. Average rent in Albuquerque now is
Damn,
like $2,100. Like it went up a
damn.
thousand dollars in like just a few years. And like people like me who moved from Kansas City, where like those prices are like a little bit more. They're still kind of high, but they're a little bit more normal in Kansas City. I didn't think it was like that big of a deal, especially compared to other big cities. That's kind of like how it is in other big cities. But for people who actually live here in Albuquerque, right, and they've been living here their whole life and they see that huge increase from 2019 to now, it's just like,
Like you better own your fucking
I
property or
know,
else you're
right?
fucked.
And you're just screwed. And then, but then you can't buy property because it's too expensive. So it's like, yeah, the, we
Yeah,
went we went
and
like on a whole nother
yeah. Well,
but I
whoever
think it's
controls the
relevant to the
housing
quote.
market.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
Just like
well, yeah, because
a
like,
modern like issue, I guess, in relation to the quote.
well, when small, like it's like in Smithville, Missouri, where I lived before I moved here. It used to be like a real small town, apparently. I mean, they literally had a hanging tree that they got rid of a couple of years ago, and locals consider it to be a like a national monument, but they took it down. Like that's how royal rural Smithville was. And I don't know if you ever went up there while I lived there. I can't. Oh, I think you did once.
I did.
I
Yeah, I went
think.
up one time.
Yeah. So you saw how big it was. It was basically kind of like a Shawnee area, but like on a lake.
Yeah, it's cool.
So yeah, so it was pretty cool. But it's like it's a lot bigger now. But apparently it used to be like a super small town, and the housing prices there, like when my dad got his house was around like 200,000, and now it's like $600,000 like worth. So I'm just like, God
Yeah,
damn.
it's just
And that was only in like
crazy.
a year or two.
Right.
So whoever controls the past controls the future. Whoever controls the present controls the past. Okay, we got completely off topic.
I think that was an amazing quote though because we went down like five rabbit holes. So
Yeah, I think it was good. Maybe when we're smarter, we can come back to
yeah, I feel like that's one of those
it.
timeless quotes that always will be relevant no matter what happens.
Mhm. I think one of the major things is probably media with this. Like any news anyone gets, regardless if it's right, left, moderate, whatever,
Hmm.
whatever news you're getting is the present. It's presenting you stuff from the past, that past events that's happened or current events, you know. And regardless if they spin it in their own direction or they're not giving you all the information, people are watching this and perceiving it. The present, the media is giving you current events that's happened in the past, but manipulating it in a way to where you think something happened. So now, who controls the past controls the future. So those people who told you about those events in the past that you just perceived is making you think, act, and feel a certain way, which is making them want you to act that way in the future.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, or is that just a bunch of Stephen
No,
King word
no.
vomit?
No, no, that makes sense. I think it's so relevant for the media too. It's relevant for a lot. But yeah, the media for
That's why I
sure.
just read books. No,
Honestly though, yeah, honestly.
yeah. Oh, life's been a lot more fun.
It is.
But cool. I mean,
Yeah.
are you good on that one?
Yeah, I don't have anything else.
Cool. Well, this has been quotes of interest. Uh, and again, the quotes from 1984 by George Orwell. I'd like to thank everyone or anyone who watched this video. I greatly appreciate it.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah. See you in the next one.